Welcome, friends, to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the University of Idaho, the quadruple murder. This is something that's tugging on everyone's heartstrings. There is so much information and so much misinformation out there. Our heads are spinning, but we have a special guest tonight, Brian Entin, the senior national news correspondent for News Nation. He was kind enough, as I reached out to him, to comply and say, "Hey, Ron, I got some time. Let's come on. Let's do this. Let's talk about it." So tonight we're going to bring you Brian Entin. But look, Ed Wallace is back from Indonesia. Ed, how you doing? How's everything going? I know the connection's a little spotty where you are. Ed's got to work on his he's going to work on his connection. He's having some trouble. I'm going to go solo. But we do have Brian Entin. He's going to bring us everything from boots on the ground, ground zero in Moscow, Idaho. He is standing by. Let's see if Ed can get back to us. We're going to see if Ed, are you back?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here, but I'm having some internet problems.
All right. Well, we're going to hope and pray that the internet gods fix the issue for you and it helps it works itself out. But Ed, as I was saying, we have Brian Entin, who's going to be joining us here in a few minutes. Welcome back from Indonesia. It's great to see you, brother. How's everything going?
Good. Got back on Sunday, but I had to go right back to work Monday night and tonight, and working from a undisclosed location, and for tonight, and then I'll be home, and I'm off for the rest of the year, and I'm going to take it easy and enjoy the family for the holidays.
Outstanding. And everyone's welcoming you back. And I want to say thank you to all the subscribers, the Patreon supporters, and the moderators and the channel members. Thank you. Hey, without further ado, because he's only got limited time, Brian Entin, senior national news correspondent for News Nation. Brian, thank you for taking out the time to join us tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, Ed and I, we had you on with the Casey White and Vicky White case. You covered all of these things with quite a bit of thoroughness, and we appreciate News Nation and everything that you guys bring us from the reporter's perspective. And Brian, I see it's snowing. You're on location. Are you outside of the location, or are you somewhere where you can't say where you are? What are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm down the street actually from the house. We're not at the house right now, but we just went to get some food actually. It's been cold and sleeting, and we actually just went to get Wendy's chili to warm up a little bit. So now we're just in the parking lot kind of hanging out a little bit before we do Banfield tonight in like a little while, in like 2 hours.
You know, a lot of my fans and subscribers for Crime Time with DutyRon, the first thing they said to me when I told them we were going to bring you on is they said, "Good, get them out of the cold," because they're all worried about you catching a cold. Let's get right into it. Tonight, you posted on your Twitter, and thank you for all of your Twitter posts, and you keep us updated. Like sometimes they're one of 20, boom, 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 posts one after the other. We saw some agents going into the crime scene. This is now well over a month into this case. They were going in there today. Could you talk a little bit about what the interaction was and how long they stayed in there?
Yeah, so we got a tip yesterday that they were going to be going back into the house, which they hadn't been in the house, and I think it's been at least a week. So we got up like super early to be there, and I think it was around 10 a.m. local time that they showed up, and it was two investigators. I don't know if they were feds or local. They came in an unmarked SUV.
Whoops.
I think I'm back now. Sorry, that was actually my mom. My mom was just calling me. Interrupted the. So they were in an unmarked SUV, and they were carrying a black like Pelican case, almost like a I think you have the video so you can see it better. Like it looked like a briefcase, but it's like a plastic Pelican case. They went and talked to the security guard, let him know what they were doing, and then they went inside And they were inside for about 20 minutes. I went to the back of the house and looked. It was harder to see in the daylight inside through the windows. At night, actually, when they're in, you get a better look. So it's
Right.
kind of hard during the day, but I did see them on the second floor a little bit. And then after 20 minutes, they left with the Pelican case, and that was pretty much it.
Hey, if it's okay with you, I'm going to play this. It's 1 minute and 58 seconds because at the end you kind of asked them, what they were doing in there, and you got zero response from them. No identification. Like, in other words, they didn't identify themselves or anything to you.
Yeah, I got zero response, which didn't really surprise me. I mean, I wasn't really expecting it. You never know. That's why I asked, but they're not supposed to talk, so I wasn't really expecting it.
Right. I'm going to let this play just for the audience because everybody wants to see. I know that the audio only pops on towards the end of this, right?
Yeah. The audio I think is towards the end. Yeah, where I asked the questions. Yep.
Okay, this is them exiting.
Yeah, I think they're talking about like locking the door again, or like kind of closing up the house.
And that's confirmed security. That's like private security, Brian?
Yeah, that's the private security that the police department hired. That's the case. That's a pretty good look at it.
Yeah, let me back that up for Ed. Ed, you've seen this before?
Well, yeah, that's a typical case that crime scene investigators may use to carry a lot of different equipment in there. No telling what's in there. Any number of forensic equipment can be carried and stored in something like that.
So it's like evidence collection or anything that they need to. And let me ask you this, Ed, you're a CSI expert. Why after 4 weeks would they? This is obviously still an active crime scene because the tape is still up, correct, Brian?
Yeah, the tape is still up. Yep.
Ed, why would they go back after 4+ weeks to go back into this crime scene?
Well, maybe the lab developed some information from some evidence that was submitted to them, and now they're looking for additional information or other types of evidence that may be there that could be associated with what they discovered in the lab.
Excellent. I'm going to let.
Can I ask her? I'm curious. What would be in? I know you said it's a variety of things, but what would be in that box? Like what kind of things?
Well, I mean, there could be all kinds of packaging equipment and sampling equipment. Hell, there could even be a forensic vacuum in there with the 3D canisters to collect or trace transfer evidence with that type of vacuum system. There's no telling what could be in there, and it could be photographic equipment for all I know. Everybody sets up their crime scene kits differently, and I have a rolling kit that has 3 different separate toolbox sections that snap together, and then I can take them apart. And in each of the sections, I have different evidence collection equipment.
So you're saying there could be a variety of things in there, photographic, anything to do photographs with, to collect more, if there's still any blood. Obviously, everything's all dried up inside there, but any type of evidence that's still left on the scene there. And again, that house hasn't been cleaned, and everything is left in the condition that it was on the crime scene day. Correct, Ed?
Well, they weren't in there that long, right, Brian? How long were they in there?
Yeah, just 20 minutes. Yeah, it was exactly like 20 minutes on the dot.
Maybe photographs. All right, Ed's again having a little bit of issue. Brian's in Idaho and he's fine in his car. Ed's at a secret location, so he's not able to. Let's let this play because I promised him to let everybody hear what went on here. So this is just you and your guys, because I saw you with your camera too, your camera, like your phone.
Sir, can you tell us what you were looking for while you were back at the house? Do you know anything about the Hyundai Elantra found in Oregon?
Wow, they parked down the block.
Yeah, they parked down the way. They've done that before, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, and it was just me, my producer Will, and then our cameraman who was there. So yeah, we were just kind of outside the house, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what went down. And it's interesting, actually, the guy in the khaki pants came back about an hour later just by himself and went back in the house just for like 2 minutes. It almost seemed like maybe he forgot something. And then he was in and out really quick that time. But it was interesting again because none of this has happened in over a week. I mean, it's just been totally quiet there. So that made it kind of interesting.
Yeah. Ed, your mic is muted, so we can't hear you. Ed, your mic. Just so you, okay, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yes.
Now, so when I got kicked off and jumped back on, Brian, how long were they in there initially?
20 minutes, like 20 minutes on the dot.
Okay, so they came out. They weren't carrying any packaging. So if they did any evidence collection, and maybe it was inside of that box that they walked out with. Other than that, it could be, like I said, it could be anything in those boxes, in that particular box. Could be hair and fiber kits, could be photography equipment, it could be blood sample equipment. Who knows?
Hey, Brian, I wanted to ask you too, a lot of the folks who follow this case, and thank you for being there for, you really, I mean, you're doing such a great job. You went back home. I know I'm hoping that you get to go home for Christmas, the end of the week. You've been there quite a while, and you've conducted many, many interviews. You had the interview when you first got there with the district attorney, with the Idaho State Police spokesman, who we really don't hear much from anymore. Did you get a chance to interview the chief or the captain, Brian?
No, I never got to interview the chief. We tried, but he did, I think, 2 interviews with Fox News. And we tried a bunch of times, but I don't know. I guess he kind of had a relationship with them, and he kind of just stuck. I never really saw him talk to anybody else, except Fox. So we did get like the police public information officer last week did several interviews though. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw she kind of took over, and really, I haven't seen anything from the Idaho, the state. I think his name is Snell. I haven't seen anything from him recently, but I wanted to ask you too, and I'm trying to condense this and rapid fire to you.
Yeah, sure.
What was your reception when you first arrived there? Not just from the police, but from public, because I know as media, you're going to go around and interview and try to talk to people from the campus. I saw you went out to the sorority. You went over to quite a few different places. You got a great interview at the vape store and the manager. I'm going to play that after you leave. What was the reception initially? And then now that you've been there so long and everybody knows who you are, what was it like in the beginning? And then what's it like now?
So that's a really good question. In the beginning, so with police, we got off, like, just to be totally honest, I think to a little bit of a rocky start, because when I got here, I interviewed the prosecutor, who was not saying the same things that the police were saying. They were kind of contradicting each other. And I think the police were kind of upset about that. And I mean, it obviously wasn't my fault, but I think they just weren't happy with the situation. So I think, but last week, I think, things kind of smoothed out, and, I told the police, we're just here to try to do our job and report the facts and stuff. So, the police have been pretty receptive and nice. And Robbie Johnson, I mentioned, the public information officer last week, was very, very responsive. And I get it. Like, there's a lot they can't say. So, we try to be respectful of that. In terms of the community, Moscow is like a really nice town. I mean, it's a beautiful town. The people are really, really nice. I mean, I've been to cover stories where I've stayed for a month, and people are not, they get really just kind of sick of the media, which I get. Here, for the most part, people have been really nice. The locals are nice. I think it's also because it's a college town. They're kind of used to people coming and going. And even outside the house, again, we've been there so much, and there are times when we go to do stories, and you get it, like, neighbors will just get really sick of you being there, which I totally understand. Right. Here, they've been pretty nice overall, I think, because it's a lot of college kids. And again, they're used to people walking around, people moving in and out. So overall, I mean, I can't say anything bad about Moscow. The people have been really amazing.
Yeah, I got the sense that they were all very friendly, and the thing of it is that I was going based off of, Brian, watching all of your coverage, and I saw some of the stores, especially the gas station. They had that sign up that said, "We're not talking to any reporters." And is that because they were being hounded by a lot of different local reporters and everybody else who was trying to get an interview with them, or was that something that maybe they were told by the police? Did you get a sense of that vibe from the gas station?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. And like there's a lot of media here. It's kind of cleared out a little bit, but there's still a lot. And then there's like, a lot of YouTubers that come in and people social media sleuths. So as people get overwhelmed, like even the house next to the house where the murders happened, they've got a sign up saying, please don't block our driveway or knock on the door. We don't have anything to say. So I think people just get worn out. And like you mentioned, I mean, I'm going to go home again here soon because I think, there just comes a point where there's not updates. And I think it almost like you need a reset and then the people need a reset too, because it is kind of like we've, come into this little town. And I think people, they get a little bit tired of it. Like you mentioned, the note on the gas station door, but overall, people have really been great here.
That's fantastic. I'm going to add Ed. I think he's audio only. Those are great, answers because people want to know. And the second part to that question that I wanted to ask you is that people are asking, was there any issues like with neighboring college towns or neighboring people against where there was like arguments amongst sororities from if there was any other neighboring colleges? I didn't do my homework to see if there's anything close by, but was there, like, in other words, it seemed like they were told not to speak to the media at the where Xana and Entin were, and I get that. They don't want to have information out into the out there that they're going to be using possibly when there's a prosecution. As a detective, retired detective, I understand that. But since there was any kind of rift between community and college, or anything like that, any kind of sense of that, Brian?
So when you talk about neighboring towns, it's actually interesting. So we're in Idaho, obviously. There's a town only like 7 miles away called Pullman, which is in Washington State, which is another big college town. There's a big college in Washington there. So, and they're almost like the towns are, almost connected because they're only 7 miles apart. So like, the kids who live here will go to Pullman. It seems like from people I've talked to more often, people in Pullman will come to Moscow because there's more to do here. And I've heard like the bars are better here and that kind of a thing.
Right.
But I haven't heard about any rivalries at all.
Okay.
And you mentioned we have had trouble with the fraternities and sororities getting people to talk. I think the national chapters came in and kind of clamped things down.
Right.
So although I was surprised the Sigma Chi president I don't know if you caught that. I tweeted it out. This was weeks ago. He ended up doing an interview with me one day. Just when he was out on the sidewalk, which was nice. But for the most part, I think they've been told don't talk to the media.
Yeah, that's the sense that we got. Ed, are you here audio only? Because we'll be able to hear you fine, Ed. Maybe not. So, Brian, I wanted to move along. Another question came in from Dina. She says, Brian, what was your most compelling moment so far in your reporting from Moscow?
So, there's been a lot, I was just telling my friend
like that.
Yeah, the other day, I feel like with these stories, there's always one moment where, because you're in, from being, it's kind of the same with the police a little bit, but you're in work mode, you're trying to dig stuff up, you get very aggressive in that way. But there's usually one moment or a few moments where it really hits me. And obviously interviewing the families, you realize oh my, it's just, I guess, it's just unimaginable what they're going through, but also just how awful this crime was, that 4 young people were stabbed and that this person is still on the run. And it's like a brutal killing,
Yeah.
So, when you talk to the families and just think of what they're going through, and then also the memorial, we were at the memorial on campus and almost all the families were there and had, parents that spoke. And again, it just hits home that these are humans and that you just think about the families and, it's like you just want to be respectful in your coverage because, it's not just about chasing down every little thing. And, you want to, at the end of the day, I just try to think of the families. So those are the most emotional parts. Compelling. Getting that surveillance video over the weekend, I don't know if you saw that, where you hear them talking about the guy, Adam, that was compelling. Talking to the vape shop manager was interesting. All of it's been compelling, I think, just because it's such a mystery.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what, the respect that you're talking about, that I understand that, because when we would notify families of these heinous crimes committed, it was very difficult to go and make a notification to a family that their loved one, no less. Now this is a quadruple murder. When you did the interview with Mr. Goncalves, were you at their home when you did that interview with them?
Yeah, we were at their house, which is like an hour and a half away, and they were just so nice. I mean, it took about an hour for us to set everything up with the camera, so we were just, in their living room, and they had the ashes there for Kaylee, and also for her best friend Maddie, and you're sitting in their living room talking to them for an hour just off camera, and that's when it like hits you what they're going through. And that's why, again, like I try, like even when we dig up certain things like the video over the weekend or the vape shop, I mean, I will, if I'm in touch with the families, like I'll call them first and be like, hey, I just want to let you know, we just interviewed this guy. This is what he said. Like, we're going to do the story tonight, but like, you don't want them to like see it on TV and be like surprised by something. And and also, of course, like the vape shop, manager told us that he had already talked to the police, and the surveillance video we knew the police had since soon after the murder. So we try to be careful. Like, obviously we don't want to put anything out there that the police don't already know about.
Right. And that's what I wanted to get to, because, interviewing witnesses and possible perpetrators of this crime, of course, we don't know who the perpetrator is. It's an unknown person or persons. The media has this kind of code of ethics where you have to work alongside law enforcement across the nation. So you guys kind of know the bounds where you have to get your story out and you have a job to do, but at the same time, you don't want to obstruct justice, right? So it's a fine line that you walk, but you guys do a great job of it, because I've been watching you since Gabby Petito, and what you guys have done going straight across the board has been nothing but exemplary. So I appreciate what you guys do, and I know that there's different reporters, different people will do different things in the name of a story, but at the end of the day, we all want to see justice served here, and that's important. Hey, I wanted to ask you about this car in Eugene, Oregon, because a lot of people are mentioning it. A lot of people are talking about it. It's all over the Twitter spheres. It's being spoken about on Facebook, and I'm going to show a little bit of the video. I'm not going to have audio. This is Law and Crime. Our good friend Jennifer Koffendorfer was on with them tonight. But this is that's a picture of the vehicle. Do you have any information? I know that you tweeted about it and you put something out on your Twitter. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, the latest that we know on that, which just before I got on the show with you, police confirmed that they don't believe the car or the owner of the car have anything to do with the murders at this point. I guess it's a female owner who I think is out of Colorado, and there was a crash with the car, and then I believe it was a homeless man who was in the car sleeping after the crash, and it's kind of an interesting story, but apparently none of it has anything to do with, at this point, that they believe with the murders in Moscow. But I mean, it's great that people are, I think it shows that people are really on the lookout. And you never know. I mean, today I was kind of on pins and needles, like, because for a while police weren't responding to us about when we were asking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I think like 3 or 4 hours had gone by since I texted them. I'm like, maybe this is something, like they're not responding. But now tonight they're saying officially they don't believe it's connected.
Yeah, I'm looking at someone just real time. I'm sure you get this all the time. People start hitting my phone up from the Moscow Police Department. Says 4:30 p.m. Idaho time. Investigators are aware of a Hyundai Elantra located in Eugene, Oregon, and have spoken with the owner. The vehicle was involved in a collision and subsequently impounded. The vehicle is registered out of Colorado, and the female owner is not believed to have any relation to any property in Moscow, Idaho, or the ongoing murder investigation. The public is asked to stop contacting the owner. So this is, again, cyber sleuthing at its worst. When people do this and start contacting owners of registered vehicles, and there was a VIN number, I guess one of the live streamers came to that location, and again, went right up to the VIN and put it out into the Twitter spheres, into social media. And now Moscow Police Department is putting out a thing saying, stop contacting the owner. So again, some of the worst things that can happen in a case like this, and we hear this, Brian, in all of these cases, is when misinformation gets spewed. It really bogs down, A, the investigators, and B, it just puts everybody in a tizzy. It has everybody all over the place. And that's why I say, listen to bona fide press releases from the Moscow Police Department and or bona fide news agencies. Because can you talk to the audience here about what kind of due diligence that you guys do before you report on stories? I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I hope I don't, like, someday I'm sure I'll accidentally make a mistake or something, but like so far, I mean, I just put facts out. I mean, that's why people will send me stuff, and I'm usually looking, like I was looking into the car all day, but not tweeting about it or doing stories about it just because we didn't have anything confirmed. So, it's you just have to be so careful, and you might not be the first one all the time, or it might not be the most exciting story. But at least with News Nation and most credible news organizations, they're not going to put anything out. And the web sleuthing and a lot of the YouTube channels, it's interesting stuff, but some of it I think does cross the line when they start contacting people, like the fact that the police had to say don't contact the owner. I mean, here you probably have some random lady getting blown up by all these calls. And we've heard from police too that there's been death threats of people involved in the case. And even last night, the lawyer for the Goncalves family was telling us that, the crazy mean emails that they're getting. And after one of the stories I did with him, people were trying to accuse him of being involved, the dad, which was like, I felt awful about. I'm like, oh my gosh, like a story I did, people are picking apart and try to bring this poor guy into it. So it's like, I love the web sleuths overall, but it's like, it's a fine line. I mean, you really can't, once they cross that line,
right,
it does start to interfere,
When I read about that with Steve, I with the dad, Kaylee's dad, I really cringed. It was a very cringeworthy moment because this is a family who you had right in front of you are, the mom, the sister, father, the whole extended family there. This is the worst nightmare for anybody. Okay?
Yeah.
You can compound it double for them because their daughter's best friend, who she grew up with from grade school or going straight up through college, was murdered with her. And now you have the other two, Entin and Xana. They're all really good friends. They live together in a house. They went to college together, so.
And one thing I would say to people is, I don't think people realize this, and I've seen this in other cases too, like when these families go through this and like they're not sleeping, like these people are not sleeping. Like they, not only is their kid dead, but the killer is on the run. These people don't sleep. And what happens sometimes is they become, you can't blame them. They're up all night looking too online, extended family members are looking, trying to find things. They're members of the group, different Facebook groups. Like they read a lot of the comments, because they're obsessed, obviously, with finding the killer. And I just think people should remember that. I mean, you can make up some fake name and go on Twitter or Facebook and say whatever you want. But you're really like hurting these people's feelings. It's just terrible.
We look at what happened just last week. The YouTuber, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to give him any credit, put together the sound bites of stop, and that whole thing. That was just horrible to do that.
Yeah.
And you're, as we always say, Ed and I always say this, you're re-victimizing the families when you do stuff like this. And before we went live tonight, I had on my website, DutyRon.com, probably 50 to 75 hits on this car, saying that it's the property owner's son and that, just all kinds of things going all over the place. And I immediately put a kibosh on it and said, hey, this is all unverified and information that will not be released here on Crime Time with DutyRon until it's released by the law enforcement or bona fide media. So those are things that you should go by. You can hear, and I call Facebook fake book quite a bit because a lot of the stories that come out of there are fake or something that's sensationalized for clicks and views. And it's something that we'll never do here. And that's why I think it's important that we speak about this. bona fide media outlets and how they vet their stories, you're not just going to get a story that someone writes to you about and just go live with it and say, all right, Ashley, let's go on the air and let's talk about this. Stuff has to be verified. So it's important. One last thing, too, I wanted to talk to you about. You did the interview at the vape store with the vape store manager. He said that they were in there 5 or 6 times. In the grub truck video, we saw Kaylee hitting on the vape. So all of this makes sense that they go in there to get their cartridges or whatever they do to do the vaping. He said that her friend, it wasn't Kaylee, it was Maddie that made the mention about the stalker to him, correct?
Yeah.
You did that interview like last week? That was right.
Yeah, it was. Gosh, all the days run together. It's Tuesday now, so yeah, it was the end of last week. Yep.
Yeah, let me see. Here it is. Actually, it aired 4 days ago. But when I watched this story, I said, this is good information for investigators because it gives them a little bit of, when we talk about victimology, right? Victimology, it all intertwines with everything that led up to this horrific crime. Because what people don't realize is that detectives and investigators and the profilers that the FBI have provided, coincidentally, I have the numbers written down here. There is 81 law enforcement from the local, state, and federal, 6 detectives, 60 FBI agents, plus 2 behavioral analysis specialists, 13 Idaho State Police investigators, which would make 81 law enforcement detectives, investigators on this case. It gives them good ammunition to get a little bit of an insight into what was going on, not just through the electronics and the social media, because all of that's important. All of the messages that these girls and guys were, all of the victims were getting leading up to this horrific crime. And this guy was good. And he told you that he was already interviewed before you did this interview, correct?
Yeah, he said the police had been in the shop a few days after the murders. They were looking for the surveillance video and then also talking with him. So yeah, I mean, I found him to be credible. And Will, the producer I work with, had met him first, was going to different shops, and he actually got emotional and cried a little bit with Will before I got there. And he's another one though. Ever since we did the interview, he actually made his own YouTube video now talking about, the issues he's having, and people think he's the killer, and so it's like, no one's going to want to talk to us anymore if everybody suddenly, starts getting pinned, like that.
And this is the thing I want to say, Brian, is, again, people who dig up information can be helpful. And I often say this, and so does my good friend, Sergeant Bill Cannon, retired homicide detective sergeant, and my co-host, Ed Wallace, who's trying to get back in here. I want to see if we have audio from Ed before we wrap this up. We always say that the media and also cyber sleuths, the people who help us gather information behind the scenes, can be sometimes our best friend and our worst enemy. When you have people that are harassing people that you go out and interview and get a story on, then it shuts them down. Like the lawyer that lived next door to the location. He went in and said, swab my mouth, get me out of this, take my you spoke with him right out in front of the house early on when you came
or I didn't. Banfield did. I think that's who she spoke to. But yeah, I mean, there's been a couple people we've talked to that have voluntarily gone and said, like, take a DNA swab for me, right. Just because they were like getting all this heat online.
Yeah. How much snow do you guys got there now? What does it look like outside? I see it's snowing.
Yeah, it's like a sleet right now. Sorry, the car just turned off. I had my little light on here. It's been snowing for like the last day. I think it's kind of turned to sleet now though, which, I'm from Florida. So like all of this is like just crazy to me.
Yeah. That's culture shock for you, right?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, we've gotten like stuck a few times. But yeah, it's which is interesting too, because I'm trying to keep remembering that, when the murders happened, it was warmer and there was no snow.
Right.
So it's like a totally different scene now, because there's snow everywhere. So, it looks a lot different than it did when all of this happened.
Wow. Well, again, I hope that you're able to get home to your family for the holidays, and you deserve that. And we even we're covering the Quentin Simon case. People were up in arms about the FBI shutting down on the weekends. You need it for your mental health. You need it also for, like you said, to recharge your batteries, to get a different take on things, to try to look at different angles for reporting, because it gets to a point where you need to just kind of recharge the batteries, so to speak. And I think it's a good thing, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Brian, anything else that maybe might stick out that you might be able to report to the audience here? Are police giving you guys any indication that they're getting any closer on this thing? And I know that I'm reaching at straws here, but could you give anything to the audience here that might stick out for you in the recent past?
Yeah, I wish I had something like that's what all my buddies and family keep asking. They're like, "So what do you like really think? Like what are you finding out secretly?" Like, and we really don't know. I mean, and I mean all my reporter friends who are here too, who we, grab a drink at night and talk about it. Like no one really it really that's what I think is so crazy about this is it really is this mystery. Like I don't have any evidence to believe that police actually have this whole thing secretly figured out. I mean, maybe they do, but we haven't gotten any nuggets that make us feel like, okay, there's an arrest imminent or something. I mean, everything on the outside really feels like, they're still just looking for the Elantra. They tell us every day they don't have a suspect. The families say that they're not giving them any indication that there's been major progress. So I mean, I hope there is like that would be amazing, obviously.
Right.
And maybe they're just that good at keeping everything a secret, but we don't really have any info that, that this thing is about to be like cracked wide open.
Right. We all know that they have to keep this thing close to the vest because there is a lot of information. They have a lot of investigative. I feel that the science is what's going to really solve this thing. And my co-host, who again has been having problems with connectivity, he just came back from Indonesia, so maybe his phone's on Indonesia kind of time. But he was training the police, the state police over there in forensics. But Ed said the same thing from the beginning when we Thursday night, we're going to have a retired New York City medical examiner's chief of staff, a legal medical death investigator. Same thing as Joseph Scott Morgan, but New York City version. Barbara Butcher is going to come on with us on Thursday to talk about forensics, talk about when is the tox going to be coming back and so forth. So that's going to be Thursday night. I wanted to ask you too, and I'm sorry, the people sending me stuff, and if I don't get this out, I'm going to be in big trouble. The lead investigator from Moscow PD has 2 years on the job. Came out through the attorney for Steve, right? For the Kaylee's dad. But does he have prior experience? Did you put in a request in? The chief talked about a combined 94 years of experience with all of his investigators assigned. That's the 6 local detectives. Brian, anything on that?
Yeah, so we've tried today to get like a more specific resume. But it was interesting when the chief put out a video today. I think it was in response to what the lawyer said on Banfield last night, because and I want to make something clear. Like every time the family and the lawyer speak, and sometimes this doesn't make it on TV, like they always say how much they support law enforcement. They seem to love the police. It's not like, I think it's just, this isn't solved and they want to make sure that they want accountability. So I think that's why they bring some of these things up. I don't think they're like anti-law enforcement at all. But anyway, to get to the question, we don't know the exact amount of experience, but you mentioned that the chief did today say they have 90 plus years combined, the people in charge. And then, there's 60 FBI agents involved. They've got this whole massive FBI mobile unit from Salt Lake City in the back of the police station in the parking lot. So, I don't know. I think with the FBI involved the way they are, and you guys would know better than me. And I know Moscow is in charge technically, but I'd imagine there's just a ton of experienced people working on this.
Yeah, they have some of the best assigned, because when you have a quadruple, murder like this, multiple murders, you don't throw your slouches at it. You throw your best people. And I know this from working in the New York City Police Department for 2 decades, when we would have major cases where it was multiple casualties. And look, I even was part of the largest crime scene in the United States, the World Trade Center. You put your best on this stuff. You don't take slouches and throw them on a case like this. So I would imagine the FBI, state, and local is doing the best that they can. And local is always going to be the lead. People get confused about it. I want to make it clear. If a homicide happens in a local jurisdiction, the only authority that can ever take it over would be the state police, and it would have to be done based on incompetence. And that really, you don't see that. I don't think I've seen it in my 30 years in law enforcement on one case. They're always going to be working hand in hand with each other. In other words, just because there's a lead investigator with 2 years on the job, it doesn't mean that he's not taking direction from somebody with 30 or 40 years experience at the FBI office. We're not fighting with each other. We're working together. And you saw this with Quentin Simon, and the frustration, Brian, that general public and the folks that live locally were frustrated that it took over 30 days to comb through that landfill, but they got the job done. And sometimes these things take time, but you can't tell that to somebody's family. You can't tell a family member. I mean, Kaylee's dad, my heart breaks for him, and I understand that a lot of this is coming from emotion. But at the end of the day, you want justice, and you don't want to put a monkey wrench in that process, because that could really make things kind of, you get to the end of the rope, and you grab a guy or a girl or whoever's responsible for this, and they get off on a technicality. You don't want that. You don't want it. Brian, I can't thank you enough for spending 40 minutes. I'm sorry that we took a little extra time, but I thought it was important to get your perspective, because you're doing such a great job for us, the listening public. So we thank you. We give thanks and praise to News Nation and the whole team that's out there. That's your people who are with you, your camera guys and gals, and your everybody behind the scenes at News Nation. We tip our caps to you and say thank you. Any final words for the folks here?
No, thank you so much for having me on. I hope that, obviously, like everybody else, that this gets solved soon, just so the families, I don't know that it'll bring them peace, but I know, they can sleep better at night. And, law enforcement's working hard, and I just, I hope this doesn't stretch on much longer, but thanks for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Family, and stay safe out there. There he goes,
Right.
Brian Entin, Senior National Law Correspondent for News Nation. Thank you, Brian. Take care.
See you later. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. All right, guys, there you have it. That was great information coming from Brian Entin. I can't thank him enough, and he gave us some great insight, and I'll continue to reach out and talk with him and get any type of information from behind the scenes. But I did want to play this for you before we end this. This is the Moscow Police Chief giving his update. This is a 12/20 from today, and this is what Brian was talking about.
So I know there's been some questions about the leadership in this investigation. What I want people to know is this is a Moscow Police Department investigation. We're utilizing the resources of the FBI and the state police, but we pick the investigators. My command team oversees this. We have 94 years of experience between us, and we're going to continue to work this case. We're going to continue to work it to the completion. We have a lot of resources that we're utilizing, but we still ask for your help. We ask for any tips that you might have, anything that you might be able to give us. We're going to take a look at those, but be assured that this investigation is the Moscow Police Department's, and I am the chief, and we're going to follow through with this. And just know that from the very beginning of this, we've been a unified group, and we make decisions together. But those ultimately, I stand behind at the end. I'd like to update you on our tips so far. We've received 7,600 email tips. We've received 4,300 phone tips. We've received 4,500 digital tips. All of this helps build the picture that we're trying to put together here to solve this case. What we want you to know is we appreciate all your help. We appreciate everything that you've done, but we're asking that if you have anything additional, please just send it to us through our tip line or through our email tip line. We appreciate that.
All right, so there was the message from the chief. I thought it was important to show that. It goes to show you what we spoke about here with Brian Entin, senior national correspondent for News Nation, and you know, again, he's saying that we're working as a unified team all together. So we got to give them strength, prayers, and positive vibes. We got to hope and pray for a solution to this sooner than later. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining this live interactive broadcast. If you like all things true crime related, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. And I want to say thank you to the moderators, the replay viewers, the new subscribers, the folks who sent super chats, the new members, and everyone who engages here on Crime Time with DutyRon. As I end all of these things, I want to say God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially these 4 victims, Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie, their families, all of the extended families, the police, everyone who's investigating this case, and the community in Moscow. Please, please send them positive vibes and prayers. Good night from New York City, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace and love from DutyRon.